Hey there, conquistadors. Welcome to another episode. Is episode what would you call it? YouTube videos?
Is an episode, maybe a series.
Do I call it episodes and other videos? Like, is this coming out of nowhere?
We've done, I think, 6 hot takes already. So I'd say we have established this as episodic content.
Welcome back for another episode of Hot Takes, Table at Gaming's premier marquee video topic. What we do, I'm Isaac.
I'm Brandon.
And what we do is we go through a conquest army list and we give our hottest, most brain dead, most himbo takes possible on armies that we usually don't play or intend to play. Today it's city-states. That's what we're going to be doing. I've never played as or against city-states.
I have played against them at the Captain Con event. There were 6 people.
That's a world qualified event.
That is a world qualified event.
Okay.
And if over here against the city-state player, I got a certificate of recognition for being a good opponent.
Wow.
And I'm not even making up. This is literally from playing the city-state player.
Incredible. So we're starting off really good vibes. City-states are the gentleman's army. They are the army for the grandest of gents. Recognizing Brandon for breaking my siege with Behemoth.
Because I was playing the double Behemoth list. That's
good. One person can make a difference, John F. Kennedy. There's a lot going on with that certificate. That's a city-states player. I salute you. You're doing your duty as an American patriot. We love that. All right.
And one thing I like about this army, well, first off, I'm glad we're doing it in summer because these are going to be the hottest of takes. City-state is obviously a passion project for the creators of the game. With a company having being based out of Greece, I think that there was a little bit more love here. Not saying the other ones didn't, but you can tell this is something that the team at Para Bellum really cared about, which I think is shown in the coolness of models. Will it show in the coolness of the rules?
Well, I'm going to say one thing. Apparently, historically, Greeks in like the Hoplite era did not have big flashy banners, and that's why city-states don't have banners. Apparently, that's
interesting.
What I'm hearing. So, speaking about passion and putting effort and knowledge into it, that seems like a nice little thing that they did. But I digress. Before we go into the actual let's talking about rules, I also want to point out that we have been doing, on the conquest topic, a narrative campaign, the Stoneface campaign, Crucible of Wills. And we've got videos out there. You should go watch them. You should go to our other points on our channel and find those videos, and you should watch those battle reports, and then you should comment either we love this, keep doing battle reports, we love this, keep doing narrative content, we love this, keep doing anything you do, and then the final option, we actually hate this, never do battle reports again, and then we just won't.
We'll just do hot takes all day.
We'll just do hot takes if that's what you want, but that's how you vote, with your comments, with your engagement. All right, that out of the way. Let's scroll down past the name, the city-states army list. Let's scroll past the boilerplate. Let's jump into the auxiliary stands. So one cool thing that this army does is you have a unit of infantry, right? Imagine you're building your hoplites, your hoplites. That's not how you would ever pronounce that word, I don't think. And you're like, wow, I sure do like infantry, but you know what else I also like? Brutes. But I don't think I would ever want to run a unit of brutes in my army. I like infantry too much. Well, city-states has you covered. You can put one Minotaur in several unit options.
Yep.
And it has a whole bunch of words to effectively say that. And really all that is doing, it doesn't change your defensive stat line. It doesn't change your weight class. It doesn't change your unit type. It changes like nothing, except for it gives you one stand that has like a different attack profile, which is what a lot of command stands actually already do. So
correct.
It's not crazy.
It's not crazy, but I think it is cool because there are some in this army abilities or artifacts or character upgrades that give the command stands a little bit more oomph. And I think it's cool in an army of a lot of where you want to run a giant stack of infantry to have 2 units, command stand, character potentially as a third, and the auxiliary Minotaur often. So your front line is doing a lot of damage, but when you take damage, you put it to scrubs in the back who just wounds. And I think that's like a very cool way to get very effective damage out in a safe way, because like you're not going to get all the stuff from the people giving support. So if your Minotaur and character and command stand have multiple cleave or good attacks, they're going to do the predominant, and then you can rely on the support to carry through. So I think it's cool, but I agree with you. It's like, cool, you're going to have like 4 attacks that cleave 3. Cool. Is that going to be good against a giant? Yeah, because it's one model. Is that going to be really useful against a big block of Dragon Slayers? Probably not.
Yeah, it's a little bit of extra damage, and as Brandon pointed out, I didn't even think about that aspect. It is what's the word of longevity of said damage, because it's not a part of the unit that's going to die. Yeah. So moving on to what you're all here to hear about, the strategic stack. When you flip a card, you can put it back down and say, I'll use that later. You can dive into the details.
I will dive into this. So you can only do it once per round, so it's important to know that it is a valuable resource that you can only use occasionally. After you resolve a flipped card, you can also then resolve a card in strategic stack, which is good.
So that's a chain activation, folks.
Exactly. And most importantly, as far as mechanics go, is there are instead of draw events, there's coming from strategic stack events, where if you come from strategic stack, you might get a +1 attack or +1 move or some other ability. So depending on the unit, as well as the items or other buffs on a unit, you might get more than just delaying a card when you come from strategic stack that will make you more effective. So managing that is important. The reason I think it's super useful, and just to finish this out, it's cool. We'll get to the benefits of this, but it is a lot of setup. You have to draw a card from your stack, so it has to be at a place where you want, then you have to put it aside, and then you don't do anything for your turn, so you're giving up tempo. So it is expensive from an action economy and tempo standpoint. So you have to be aware of that, and you don't get stuck in these weird traps where you're like, I'm going to do these, put this guy here, and then go with this guy, and then pull this up, and then try to do this, because you might spend so much time setting that up that the opponent might just play around it. So just be aware. The reason I actually really like it, though, and I think where most people should use it, is there's oftentimes in Conquest where you set your stack and you think a thing is going to happen, and that thing doesn't happen, and your entire sequence is now going to be off tempo, and you're going to miss a lot of targets or things you want to do. This is great where I'm like, I think Isaac's going to go with this unit, and then he doesn't, and I'm going to be like, strategic stack. And then now I can get back into the correct sequence and then pull things back out later. And that's how it was most effective against me when I played against city-states. And I think it's kind of a good way there. It does feel very Wadru-esque, which is there is a very clear tempo in this game with the card draw and I go, you go, or alternate activations. And with Wadrun, you need to be very in tune with that to hit your chance. Here it seems the same way, which is you need to know when to put things and take things out of the strategic stack, so you don't faff around and kind of get lost.
Yeah, I'd actually be very curious. Comment below if you're a city-states player and tell me specifically, don't tell him, tell me how much you actually use the strategic stack in any given day. Because the way that I am thinking about it, I'm like, early game, there's some times where my opponent might have card advantage or might be stalling me out with character cards, where I could see myself using this, like delaying a unit and waiting until trying to get my opponent to play out more of their cards, especially with some early game shooting units like the Selenoi, I think are the light ones. But there's also not a lot of shooting presence in the city-states list. Like, with 100 Kingdoms, with mercenary crossbowmen, I could see myself using that like all day, every day. Just, well, even then, I would just put my mercenary crossbowmen at the end of my stack. Wait, you are more familiarized with the details than me.
Yeah.
Can you, if it's the last card in your stack can you basically delay one more by immediately putting that to your strategic stack and then drawing, and then like waiting and then drawing it as your last card out of the round? Like basically delay one more.
I believe that's how it works.
All right, comment if that's wrong.
Yeah,
I could see that being useful to like, oh, they never actually moved the unit into range that I wanted them to, but I can delay one more activation and see if they're forced into doing that, or if I can at least force them into not moving forward right now.
Yeah.
If you can do tricky plays like that, that's cool. But I think once you hit mid and late game, I think you stop using strategic stack because the tempo cost is insane. Like I know basically every game that I'm in, like mid game, tempo or winning that supremacy ability gets pretty vital.
Oh, correct. Yeah.
And it's almost unthinkable to me to be like, yes, I'm going to draw this unit and then I'm going to save it for later, and now you get supremacy effectively.
Correct. Yeah.
Unless the buffs are huge, but
and the one thing I want to call out, I know we were talking about Phalanx, Inspire, and all that, is like one thing, and I'm going to highlight this.
We haven't been talking about that.
No, we're talking about that offline. And we'll get to it later. But one of the things that's important is if you come from this effect, you can get inspired even if another rule like Phalanx prevents you. So it is like the single way you can get most of the infantry units inspired. And I just feel that is a lot of setup.
That's interesting.
You probably should be looking for other things, such as a Polemarch's ability to get +1 clash. You don't have to sacrifice 2 turns of activation to get that.
Yeah.
That's the hottest take in this whole video. Ice cold. That's an ice cold take.
Ice cold. All right, let's talk about supremacy abilities. Speaking of ice cold takes, I think Carry Over the Godflesh, our first one, which is on 2 units, actually sucks. Because when you activate from the strategic stack, you get Hardened +1, and your March characteristic is reduced by 1. I think that's really stupid. I'm not going to talk about the second part of it, because the second part of it is about a unit that's unreleased. And to catch you up to speed, if this is your first Hot Takes video, we don't talk about unreleased units.
They too often change before they get to us, so any hot take, it's just conjecture.
It's too hot.
Not worth it.
So, the reason I don't like this is because it's a defensive buff that depends on priority. I already don't like Bastion because you need to win. Like, as I was just saying, you need to win Supremacy, and then you use your first card to like put up the buff. But in this case, like Bastion's bad enough because if you lose Supremacy, you don't get Bastion. The enemy inspires and clashes and destroys your unit. In this, not only do you have to like win Supremacy, but you also have to then say, I'm not using this card right now. So, and then they get their activation, which is going to probably destroy your unit. And then you go, okay, now that unit from the strategic stack, now it's got hardened. Oh, wait, it's only got 1 wound left.
Yes. So I'm going to make this for action economy sequence, for Bastion to go off, you are wagering 2 things. One is you have to put the unit high in the stack, so you're kind of pushing off other options. And 2, since you can only have 1 draw action, it's competing with other draw activations. There are not a lot of draw activations across the game, like there's some, but not a ton. The problem with this is you're using your once per round ability to use strategic stack. You can't use this for any other buffs, so you're basically saying, I'm going to use this just for +1 harden, -1 move, and you're going to acquiesce an entire turn. You're just going to say, you get a turn where I'm going to do nothing. And for that, you have harden 1 at the cost of -1 move. The cost to get this ability does not reflect the power of the ability. What I would want for something like this is hardened at a much higher rate. I would want maybe evasion as a backstop if they have something insane like smite that gets around high armor and hardened. You are sending so much, including reducing your movement, to get to mitigate 1 cleave. Seems very Rube Goldberg. Or Bird Machine.
I think in general, I give Hardened a little bit more credit than he's giving, but I also don't think it's worth the cost that he's talking about.
When we get later to units, I think there's one target that this is interesting. I'll say it right now. I think Hoplite, everything else base armor is too small. We'll dig into it later.
Let's jump to Polemarch.
I'm going to take this as a hot take. I think this is probably the coolest or the most impactful Supremacy here.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't play it, but I think the person I played against to use this, the fact that they want to run big blocks of units, you want to bring Minotaur as an attachment, so you have a strong front line to do damage. Getting +1 clash to a big group of units is just good. It's good.
Good.
If you attach it with something that has Phalanx, which doesn't get Inspire, well, but you functionally got Inspire. Yeah.
And it gives you a Tenacious.
Yeah, I was going to say, which is also good. So, like, this just seems very useful in the composition of the army and with the units you have available.
Tenacious, by the way, is the first failed saving throw every turn or every instance of, like, damage you throw away. So if someone, like, deadly shots you, you just throw that away. You're like, I don't take 2 damage. And it happens every single time. So impact hits, throw away 1 damage. Or like 1 defense roll. Then they clash, throw away 1. Then they trample, throw away another 1.
Yep. Same thing. Yeah, like you said, it in certain cases you can be discarding 3 wounds. Same thing like if
during one
ice yacht, I charge, impact, I clash, throw 1 away, I cast a spell. Like that feels good, especially if you want to run a big brick and you once again, if you do this, you take the auxiliary unit, right? Like because
Minotaur with the 2-handed axe and Clash 4 Thetes. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Aristarch. Infantry tactics. It's something to do with drawing from a command stack and it gains something. You get draw from the command stack.
Yeah.
I glazed over. My brain, all the wrinkles just self-smoothed.
Yeah. Same. It's similar to the first. You get +1 move, which is kind of interesting, but the problem is you can only do it on the strategic attack. So like you want.
Wait. No. This is the one good... Sorry. Once per battle at the beginning of the command phase, you may place a command card onto your strategic stack. So you're not... It doesn't count as your strategic stack for the round.
So you can...
And... Okay. That's actually good, but you cannot combo it with the Carrier of the Godflesh thing, which is where I
only use it here with +1 move. And the problem is I feel like to get the most out of +1 move, you'd want to use it in the first 3 rounds, probably to get board state, maybe. I don't know. Once again, for the setup cost and the once per game ability to start there, it just seems like a lot of setup and a lot of things you're giving away for +1 march.
We're going to talk about it later, but there's some units that you can like give Vanguard and are already base move 6. So the ability to go 21 inches with their first activation on the board does seem like a pretty nifty thing. At the cost of no tempo, and
you're right.
You double.
That's actually
activate.
We'll get to that when we get to the unit.
The double activate is, I think, the weakest part of that, just because it seems like you're doing it early in turn and then throwing away initiative. But we'll talk about that with specific units.
Yeah.
Eparchos.
I think Cav and Chariots are good. We'll get into those later. So I think making them better is good. But the problem is you only get the improvement to impact and terrifying if you flank or rear charge. And in general, those are kind of hard to do just because no one wants that to happen to their unit. So yes, you can bait things out. Yes, you can do things, but I don't know.
So the enemy regiments don't count towards seizing objective zones sounds insanely powerful. Because that does not require flank.
No, you're right. Actually, that thinking
that just happens as long as they're engaged.
Yeah, you could just take a bunch of things and just play a game where you just throw units and just try to keep them alive and just that's actually fun. Yeah. Okay.
Is that better? Well, when we talk about the actual cavalry and chariot units, then we can make the judgment call on whether that's.
But this could be very regressive. Just playing a game where you don't intend to win, you just make sure they never score. That's kind of hilarious.
I don't think you can stop them scoring early enough to actually then win the game yourself, or even deny them the win.
Yeah.
Just because you have to cross the field in order to start doing that.
Correct, but they are cabs, so they move. So I think there's funny stuff you could probably do there, and I bet if you time it right, you can probably engage units at pivotal turns and prevent them from scoring and pull ahead. So that actually is way better than the other parts of the ability.
So basically, here's how I'll summarize the Supremacy abilities in a vacuum. Looking only at Supremacy abilities, Polemarch, top tier.
Yep.
Aristarch and Eparchos, usable. I would actually maybe say Eparchos more usable.
Yeah, I would agree.
Carrier of the Godflesh, from the Idolon and Inquisitor, terrible, bad. We'll reevaluate when Clockwork Hoplites come out.
Correct. Yeah, I agree with that.
Let's look at the Idolon.
Boom.
Okay, so this is a brute character. You don't see many of those. It's got high movement, even for a brute. 7 is whack. 6 wounds, whack. Clash 3, pretty good average for a character.
There's ways to get better there, but we'll get
4 attacks, not good. I think 4 attacks with how beefy the rest of the stat line is, like this is putting him solidly into a defensive character.
Yep.
And then defense 3, 2, hardened 1. Yeah, that pretty much solidifies it as defensive character.
Correct, but there's a few things that are going on here that's interesting. So one is it brings a lot of Inquisitors, which I think are good. You can only bring 2. We'll talk about them later. And you can hang out with them. He's a brute. It fits well. But he has combat directives, which is at the end of each round Supremacy ability, you get to pick one of 3 abilities to apply to yourself. And what's nice is you default to something that's survivable, but there's ways to actually get more damaging. So, for example, if I put Greetings to a Fellow, now I'm back up to 9. Yes, my invasion is 1, but like I get 9 attacks, right?
And how often does your evasion actually come up outside of duels?
Correct. Yeah, and then you can give, because you usually attach these guys to Inquisitors, so you can give them parry. That might be a good thing to do sometimes. And then precision armament is you gain cleave +3. So like what's nice is you are a basic good frame, and then you can pick different options. They do have the ability to take modifications, which are later that like super change the ability, and I think make them way more defensive, and I think actually give up these combat directives and are different. We'll cover that later.
I think one of the most interesting things that this one can do actually is that it can join infantry stands despite being a brute. Infantry regiments, which is maybe it's not the coolest thing in the world, but it does open up flexibility in warband building. You're not obligated to bring a brute unit if they don't fit in your army. And spoiler alert, I don't think Inquisitors or Minotaur Haspists are good units on their own. So, like, the fact that you can avoid taking them and you can still take this guy,
kind of cool. Yeah,
pretty cool.
Hoplites I think are good frames.
Terrible Supremacy ability, though.
Oh, yeah, 100%. This guy is a killer. Like, you bring him as a secondary, and 100%.
Yeah. Mechanist.
Cool.
Pretty basic infantry stat line. He is a support guy. He's a little presto. Oh, unstoppable. Oh, he lets your guys re-roll their charge roll. Hoplites don't make charge rolls. Okay, and so he can join Hoplites and Therakites. And Therakites are the only one there that makes charge rolls.
Yep.
So, like, this ability is basically saying put him in a unit of Therakites.
Yep.
Okay. I don't like it. I think they're move 6 and he's move 5, so he actually slows them down.
Yep.
PB, let's remove the movement stat from characters. Let's go. Let's make it happen. Let's remove that movement stat. Wadroon hate it. City States apparently hate it.
Yep. And I think that's the best thing I like about the Therakites is they got movement 6. That's gonna be my hot take for them. The one thing, so they have a few spells here, which we can cover in the spell section, but I think
let's talk about them right now. We won't have the text on the screen, but this is important when considering the Mechanist as a unit.
Yeah. So Clockwork Parade, we're just not going to cover because it only works on automatons, and they don't.
But it sounds fun.
It gives better movement.
You play the little song. You play the little parade song. If you show up and you actually do like the marching, and you have a little drum that you beat, like, then you win points. Not as many points as the certificate of recognition, but like you'd earn points with me.
Yeah, you can't. We all can't beat me. So I looked at all the spells. The only one that I thought really like blasted out at me, I don't know if you have any, is I believe it's Torque, which is you get to count a unit as heavy, which I feel is a fun way to be like, oh, my light guys who just moved 21 inches because I did a bunch of combination of things. Guess what? Turn 2, they're heavy. They're scoring, right? I think that's kind of cool.
That is kind of interesting, actually.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just roll down. I know.
Okay, let's look at the.
Because I want to get this. Yeah,
Iron Stride.
12-inch skill 3.
Hindering.
Oh yeah.
No, I mean,
So the
no.
so the aggression drive target automaton gets +1, doesn't matter. I guess the clockwork parade target friendly regiment treats total charge.
Oh,
This
that's
says
not
5. Sorry, I mixed the two up.
okay.
Auto aggression directive is the one that doesn't matter because there's nothing to cast it on. Clockwork parade, there's a few other abilities that do this, so we have to explain phalanx right now because this is important.
Phalanx is a special rule which gives you +1 defense from the front only, but it makes it so that you can never benefit from the inspired special rule, and you don't roll charge, you just have +3.
Yep, which is nice because it's consistent. The problem is if anything's outside of that, what are you going to do? Well, Clockwork Parade gives +5, so you can now always get something that's up to 5 away. So, like, that's cool for consistency. There are, and this is textually overrides the Phalanx limitation, so that's how it gets around it. There are a few other abilities and magic items that give a similar effect, so I wouldn't take them just for this, but it is good. The Iron Sired, as you kind of mentioned, removes hindering, which is like cool.
Yeah, I don't think that they have any like impact reliant units. Like they have units that have impact as like a cute little bonus.
It's not like 100 Kingdoms where there's a unit that's like this is all the damage is coming from impact or nothing. So like sure. Torque is a thing that I mentioned that I think is good. Target friendly regiment, its class becomes heavy. This lets things light score. That's good, right? So like I think you can do janky, unexpected things with that, and I think that's cool.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird because like that's pretty much all it does as far as I'm aware. There are some rules that you can't use the withdraw action anymore, and hindering affects heavy, doesn't affect light at all. So like there are some minor interactions, but for the most part this is basically just saying your regiment scores until the end of the round. All right. Next unit, I believe is the Polemarch or Polemarch. I don't know.
Polemarch.
Okay, this guy, 6 attacks. It's in red because it's important. 6 attacks and flurry, he adds a little bit of damage. He also gives unstoppable. Oh, maybe that's just what infantry characters do in City State.
They almost all
done more research.
No, they all do that. But yeah, once again, there's a lot of stuff that just don't get that. So with him, you could put it on Agema, which I actually think are good because they don't have phalanx, so they will make the charge roll. So unstoppable on them is kind of cool. Thoracites, we already talked about.
Yeah, it's only Agema and Thoracites. I guess he could join the Selenoi and Saturoi, but with 6 move, he's not like bringing him down. Correct. But I think what you're really bringing this guy for is the battlefield tactics, fight in the shade.
So, 2 things. One is if he's your Supremacy, you give the attachment a +1 clash. So like
in a big unit of Hoplites.
Exactly. That's where you do it. And then the second thing is, like you said, the battle tactics, which is just like it's similar to the battle combat directives from the Inquisitor, which is at the beginning of the character stand's activation, you get to select 1 until the end of turn. It sits there. So do you want to cover the 2?
Yeah, reroll 1s against enemy regiments. Reroll 1s against you when they volley you, or unyielding special rule. I'm gonna look up what unyielding is because I don't know off the top of my head what the heck that means. Do you know off the top of your head?
I looked it up earlier, and it's so the way you're gonna look it up, but I think the way it kind of goes is fight in the shade is how you get there, and then once you're in combat, you throw with the unyielding.
Enemy regiments cannot seize an objective zone that stands in this regiment range of. That
is good.
Is not bad. That is not bad. Combined with some of the other things that you can do, namely the Eparchos special ability, Supremacy ability, I mean.
That they have a lot of ways to interact.
It's an interesting thing.
Same thing, they can give things heavy, like they can really mess things up. And you already said this, but Statline's good. Because Statline's good. He kills things. Obviously, he doesn't have like cleaves or something. You'd have to rely on items. We'll get to some interesting items later, but yeah, you put him in a big. I think the right way to run him is probably throw him. If he's your warlord, throw him in with the hoplites, attach a Minotaur, and just like use these things to be annoying. Yeah, cool.
I would probably mostly do fight in the shade. I would probably mostly make my enemy reroll 1s to volley. Like there are circumstances where come and get it makes sense.
Correct. It depends on the army and the situation and stuff like that. Like I know there's pivotal turns where I'm in a zone and they might outscore me, then I might want to turn that off. But yeah, I agree.
Aristarch. For all intents and purposes, I consider this the same stat line minus flurry.
Yep.
It might actually be the same stat line, but yeah, also unstoppable. I didn't realize that all the foot characters actually gave that.
Yeah.
So I guess that's we don't have banners, but hey, unstoppable is a pretty good rule, but we don't want everyone to just natively have it, and we don't want to make an officer that's not a standard bearer give it to you. So this is how they work around it, I guess. They're another battlefield orders guy. They have battlefield orders. The Polemarch has battlefield tactics, right? There are things that key off of one or the other specifically.
Yeah.
They're functionally the same.
Yep, and they have conditions where if you have an order and then you get a tactic, it drops it off.
Right? But like you can never do that.
There is an ability, there is an upgrade on the character upgrade for units that you can use a character stand within 18 inches, leadership value, and be affected by their combat orders or tactics.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. All right. So untouchable, reroll 6s for defense.
Yeah.
Or bravery can't be, you automatically heal broken and you're not affected by terrified. Both pretty good effects. Combined with the wet fart of a supremacy ability, it's not really a wet fart. That I said that was one of the usable ones. I don't think that this guy gives enough as a character, maybe as a secondary character.
Yeah. Yeah. We get the character attachment. We'll talk about the ones. I think there's probably some world where you go with these guys early and then suddenly everyone within 18 inches keys off that and you like power up a big line. But like, yeah, once again,
if you can get a bunch of people untouchable, I think that's cool. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Because untouchable counters deadly blades.
Yep.
Because it makes them reroll 6s. And then the fight in the shade counters like flawless shots or precise shots or whatever it's called. Yep. Because when they roll 1s, they have to reroll those. Yep. So some pretty interesting stuff that you can do depending on what your enemy is bringing. So I guess maybe it's probably worth it to bring one of each.
Yep.
But
if you get the character upgrades on the units and you spend the points. But like the one thing I want to say is like there's a lot of neat stuff here, and the concern that I would have for anyone building a list is don't build a Rube Goldberg machine. If you build a very fragile thing that you have to go first, you have to activate a combat order, and then you have to be within 18 inches of the character stand so that you can get the it makes it's fragile. It's very fragile.
Yeah. All right, Eparchos is the last boyo.
It's a cav.
Oh my god, every foot guy has 6 attacks except for the priest.
Yes.
Wow.
This guy is good because he has dread, which I like. Dread, I think, makes them never inspire. Inspire, which is cool. He has, once again we talked about, he has impact hits.
Defense 4?
Yeah, that's good.
Wow. I'm pretty sure Sacred Cavalry or whatever,
the companion
cavalry. I don't think they have defense 4. I guess he's good at a duel between cleave 1 and 6 attacks at class 3. Wow. I kind of like this guy.
Yeah.
I kind of like this
for
guy.
100 points.
So the fact that he can only bring... Wait, he can bring 3? Okay. I saw this character's warband can't do stuff. I assumed it was like Thunder Riders and like pretty much everything else that you can't take more than 2 of the unit that it limits, but no, it's more than 3. So, okay, yeah, I can take 3 regiments of companion cow. Is that even a limitation?
I don't think you would ever take 3. You would take 2, and then you want to take 2 work chariots. We'll get to that.
Probably. Well, yes, I agree with that. I would even say 2, and then a sacred band, and then a war chariot. Sacred band aren't out. We won't talk about them. All right, let's move on. We're done talking about these fools.
Okay, so do you want to talk? Is there any items that jump out to you?
I like Aristeia because it's named after my favorite infinity-based board game. No, I'm just kidding. I actually do like it because... Oh, wait, it's a draw event. Wow. I legitimately, up until this point, thought that it was a passive ability where everyone around it within 8 inches of you just ignores phalanx and gets +5 instead of +3. I was like, that's really good for 20 points. Oh, it's a draw event. So you draw it, you pick one unit to do it. Oh, buddy boy, that is... Okay, never mind. That stands out to me as particularly not great. I still think it's like good because the set 5, that's the top 33% of what a dice can do for you. Yeah. So that's pretty good. it's way less good than I thought it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's also bad. It feels bad to take things to get around your limitation from Phalanx. But as we said, there's a few things that give you +5. This is one of them. I feel like every time we do these, I always say I want to talk about the first item, and I feel they just do that because I think the first item is consistently interesting. I like Standards of the Last Oration, and the reason I like that is two things. There's already a huge theme in this entire army around controlling and doing good things with objectives, heavy, blah, blah, blah. This item lets you count as +2 stands for seizing, which I think is an interesting way to win out on close matchups. But more importantly, for 55 points, which is super expensive, I understand that. If it comes down to a pivotal turn, you are an objective. You got to put this item on a unit. They have to sit on the objective that's the most expensive, because if they die, you still count as scoring it at the end of the turn. And that can be wild if you need just a few extra points, right?
That does sound pretty
powerful. Don't just deny them from scoring, you score, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is a very huge swing, because it makes it very, if they spend resources to kill you, you're not getting as much as you think. So I think this is really good if you're going to go play the zone game, and this army feels like it should be playing the standing in the circles game.
My counterpoint to that is I think that the person that would be having that would probably be your like big boss guy, and he's most likely in a unit of like 9 stands of hoplites, and you actually don't want them to die, and they shouldn't die. And if they do die, I think you have a lot bigger problems than I'm gonna get 3 victory points.
I would not put this. So if I was going to build an army with Polemarch and on hoplites, and he's my main, this is the thing I would have on like the second unit that's not quite as tanky and not quite as good. That's how I would use it. At the very least, I think it's interesting, because not only does it make you better at holding things, it makes it so that you are guaranteed at least 1 turn opponent, which I think is
here's where I would do it. I would actually have a character join like the 6-inch move guys, take the other upgrade we'll talk about that gives them Vanguard, and like turn 1 get a light unit onto
that's actually really good.
18-inch away objective.
Just like, yes, they're only going to live till turn 5, but they're scoring very early.
Yeah.
And on the mid-turn, when something's in your grill killing you, you're still got 1 last turn.
Yeah.
And then your big phalanxes are reinforcing and take over. I like that.
Primodynamic Globe is the last bestowed. The last banner. Oh, it's a banner, so only infantry can take it.
Dude, so we usually don't cover every one of these.
No. But
okay,
I think this is good. Particularly interesting because all friendly regiments count as wizard. Within 8 inches count as wizard. That's the best. In Wadroon, there's a 5-point upgrade to make your character count as a wizard for the purposes of interference.
Okay.
For 5 extra points, this is an aura.
Oh, okay.
And then the way wizards work is all of those units then project their own auras of interference.
Okay.
Which means that for 10 points, that is a steal. With Wadroon, if you have 5 points spare, you buy that relic. I think that if you save 10 points and a banner slot on an infantry hero for Primodynamic Globe, that just seems way too good to pass up. Like
10 points got me. When I read the ability, I'm like, but you're right. 10 points
for 10 points.
Yeah. Like, it's going to make like the way
it makes its money.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
I'm easily makes its points back against Dwegum. And I would even say, Sorcerer Kings, obviously.
Yeah.
I was going to say Old Dominion, but then I realized that they're not really in a position where they care that much about interference. Correct. I think that they mostly like cast their... it depends on whether... This is not an Old Dominion hot takes video. Let's move on. I don't think that there's any armors that really care.
There's
okay.
All right. Chrysor's helmet, helmet. The reason I think this is good is because Phalanx units don't get to inspire. Enemy stands in contact with the character stand. It's always going to be in the front. Can never lose the inspire special rule. So I like this because it takes, in units that don't get to inspire, you bring the opponent to your level, which I think is good. 35 points is a lot for that, but I do like that. And then the problem is it does dual stuff, and I don't love dual stuff. Quicksilver at least makes you go first. Flurry's at least good.
No, it makes enemy units lose those.
Oh, lose those, yeah, which is good if you have this on a Polemarch, because then you got Flurry and they don't go first. So like, I like it for the inspire thing, which is it brings them down to your level, which I think is good. 35 is expensive.
Yep. Weapons. Blade of Eacides,
Yes.
Icates. Cleave 4 might as well be Smite, but this is basically just saying that they want you to ignore all defense, but also hardened will kill you, will hurt you.
Yep.
The +1 clash is fine, but -1 attacks is terrible. When all of the heroes are 6 attacks base, though, I think 5 attacks with 4 clash.
So the reason I don't like this is I think you'd want to put this on like a Polemarch, and they give if they're your warlord, they give +1 clash, so you're at 4 already. Is going to 5 great? I don't know. The losing 1 attack does feel bad, and you're paying 40 points for this.
Yeah.
If they have high evasion, you're still not doing things. Where I think the next item Atalanta's Spear for 30 points, where it gives just +1 attack and cleave, feels great, because I think 7 on a Polemarch
7
with flurry. Yeah, I just feel like that spikes way higher. So like
I see giving it actual cleave. Yeah,
correct. Yeah, because I think you'll need something to get cleave, but I just feel like that you're losing a little bit. Maybe it's great. Maybe it's great because there's low cleave in the army, but I just feel like I would take the spear more often just because it's a little cheaper.
And the abilities are
so flurry on 7 attacks just feels like you can just pop off, which seems cool.
Yeah, cleave +1. I think Atalanta's Spear would go on an Eparchos in every single list, but with just cleave 1, I think that's really destroying that possibility, and I think that makes it completely a lot less appealing to me. Comment below. Do you use Atalanta's Spear?
Yeah.
I don't see any of the weapons actually coming up often, so comment below if you use any of the weapon relics in the city-states list, because I think you can make cases for them, but I don't think that they're like, I gotta add them.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Inscriptions are kind of weird. Inscriptions are unique to city-states. Can you explain subscriptions or inscriptions?
Well, no, I can talk about the items. Like, what do you... I'm not sure where you're trying to lead me to, Isaac.
I'm legitimately curious as to what makes an inscription different from like an armor or a weapon. I think
you can only have one per slot, so I think they just have another slot they can put things in.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if they one bestowed relic, 2 bestowed relics.
Yeah,
and everyone can just take. Okay, this guy takes modification or bestowed relic, and this guy only takes modifications. Basically, what I was wondering, because I didn't do the research myself beforehand, I thought that there was an actual limitation to inscriptions, like, hey, only one type of character can take these, or okay.
So I think the big thing is that inscriptions are not. So like, if you're one of the characters can take 2 bestowed artifacts, and then if you get combat of high enough or what tactics of high enough, you can get another.
But they don't have retinues anymore.
But okay, yeah. But I think it's for the guy who can take 2. It doesn't double up on stuff. It just seems like another class of things.
Like you could take the 10-point orb, and you could also take Inscription of Later Alloys, which that one's interesting. You reduce defense. You lose phalanx, and you add +3 to your March characteristic. This comboing with the Vanguard thing that we keep talking about does sound really interesting to me, because there are certain turns in the game where that -1 defense is literally not a downside. So that +3 March is going to be massive.
So the only question is, and we'll get to the item or the thing that gives you the
it's unit that you're attached to.
Yeah, the character stand gains the following draw event. So since draw events they don't activate unless you're
you're right. So
you can never get Vanguard.
Never mind. Yeah, all the stuff that I was saying about it being good, it's the hottest take because it's a take that's not real.
I don't think it's good.
It's smoke.
Yeah, I don't like it just because like you take defense -1, so you're worse. And you just lose phalanx, which is the
turn 2.
Yeah.
You take Inscription of Lighter Alloys.
Yeah.
Turn 2, because you march onto the field turn 1.
Yeah.
Then but that requires a light unit. Never mind. I'm trying to make this work. I think turn 3, which is where you're most likely going to use it because you have a big block of hoplites.
Yeah.
I was going to say adding 3-inch march to get the hoplites to the center of the board. That's what you want. But the fact that turn 3, your enemy's likely going to have shooters in position and flanking forces, and they
You're gonna
might
want
even
that.
be able to countercharge. Like, yeah, never mind. I think that there's use cases. 35 points is a lot, but I think that people do take this. Comment if you don't take this. Because I think people take this, and I'm just not saying the full potential of why people take it.
Impact resist.
Tenacious is a good special rule, but getting it as a draw event, bad for the same reason I don't like. Wait, all inscriptions are just draw events? Wait, no, balance is not.
No.
They count as more for scaling. So I don't like that.
I thought I will say the words I use, which is Inscription of Balance is interesting because it makes you higher for scaling things. And then Isaac pointed out none of the damaging spells or things that you probably are going to get cast on you care about scaling. And I was like, oh, wait. Yeah, you're right.
There are some things that scale.
Correct, but not...
But you're already, like, taking 8 model units. Like...
Exactly. So, yeah, the difference between 8 and 12, and then, like, you're giving up a pick from another bestowed art. Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's neat because it's a different design space. I don't know many other items that do this, but it doesn't functionally do anything. So I think the next thing we're going to talk about is specific just to the Idolon and a few other... These are...
The Idolon is the only one that can take most of these, or maybe some of these. I guess it's only 2 of those.
So,
but the Mechanist can also do them.
Correct. So these are not bestowed artifacts or whatever, so you have to be able to take modification.
Yes.
The 2 you said. So the first one is Idolon, which is it completely changes your stats.
It makes you even more defensive, which I think is crazy.
Yes. So that's why I don't know. You get Hardened 2 and Aura of Death, and then you get
8 wounds, but only 2 attacks. Like that.
Yeah, I don't see the use for that. I feel like you want him to be an assassin because you're already taking big blonky units that can soak damage, so you don't need another thing to soak damage. So yeah, I don't see why you would take this. That's my hot take.
Alternate programming, I think, is interesting. Well, actually, with alternate programming, you can take... Never mind. I was going to say... alternate programming comboed with alternate Soma makes sense, but I'm looking at it again, not really, because, it makes the opposite of sense. Giving a brute unit Oblivious, not that great.
So I think
sort of good, but...
Because, I think the way you run this is the alternate programming is when you want to run the Idolon with the Inquisitors because they're brute units, so you can give brute units +1 brutal impact because I believe they have... Right, this doesn't help.
Oh, it gives it to the whole regiment. Okay,
right. So that's where it's interesting. The Brute Regiment gains Oblivious. I don't think they have it natively, so this allows you to take a little less damage. Oblivious a cover, I think, and it's whatever.
I figured it out.
Yeah.
Alternate Soma, the exact reason you take it, it can join like one of the light units, right? Like Agema or whatever. You put it in that, and it counts as 3 for scoring, and it doesn't slow them down because it can join infantry.
Okay.
So now you have a light unit that scores.
That's hilarious. Okay.
But assuming that Agema will get to it. Agema might be medium, but if they are light...
They are medium.
They are medium? Oh, well, then it's not interesting. It's only interesting if you can join a light unit. Okay. Well, I don't think that I'm really interested in either of the other 2. I don't know if
I'm not super interested in them.
All right.
So let's go to Masteries, because I think...
Expert Scouts. I like Expert Scouts. Is a little expensive.
Yeah.
But for 50 points, 1 unit a turn of non-phalanx infantry get Vanguard when they march onto the field.
The person with this mastery does not have to be on the table, which I think is important. And
that's true.
Entire duration. So I like this because if you plan your warbands correctly, you can be getting some units way up the table with an extra move when they enter, which is really good. And I think they can combo after each other because the first turn you can have a light guy go up 3 moves, and then the second turn a medium can swing in from the side. And I think that reinforcement usually doesn't make sense unless you have Vanguard. So I think like this is a nice way for you to kind of like get some units up the table, but you can't use Phalanx.
Yeah, so the important thing is the only units that this actually applies to are Agema, Thoracites, and Selenoi. Because Saturoi already have Vanguard.
Correct, you're right.
So you have 3 units that this can apply to, which does limit its usefulness.
Correct.
Because those aren't exactly regiments that you're like spamming. And it's a hard... my thesis here is it's a hard sell to spend 50 points for something that is literally only really going to be useful on 3 units for the first 3 turns of the game and then like stops doing anything.
Yep.
I do think that it gives you some pretty good scoring potential in those first 3 turns.
Yep.
Is it 50 points? I think yes. In many games it will be worth 50 points for you, but you do have to kind of think about what you're doing there.
Yep.
Any other tactical masteries stand out to you?
I would say the combat ones that make you better at duel, I feel, can be a trap.
Okay, yeah. If we're jumping into combat, then
Sorry, none of the tactical ones, and none of the combat ones, like getting I'll say flawless strike is fine, but like
for 40 points, I do not think it's worth it because it only applies to auxiliary stands.
Yep.
And Therians already have pretty high cleave. I'm pretty sure they're cleave 3 and line breaker. Well, I don't think line breaker applies to the auxiliary ones, but. The Haspists, they only have 4 attacks, so like how often are you gonna trigger it? It's not 40 points. Let me put it this way: flawless strikes mathematically basically scrums out to +1 cleave. There's a lot of nuance to that, but so this is like a true hot take, and you can comment all the math about why I'm actually wrong in the majority of cases, but I'm just gonna say it. To me, flawless strikes and all those abilities like it are effectively +1 cleave. I would not pay 40 points for +1 cleave.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, I agree. That's why. Yep.
For like 3 or 4 stands of auxiliary in my army. So we talked about.
We're gonna go past Mechanicus, so we're gonna go to the other 2 spells.
Let's talk about Promethean.
And Hephaestus. I don't know how to pronounce
Prometheans and Hephaestians are the giants. They are monsters. They are also spellcasters, and they have an interesting ability where the more damage they deal during their activation, their wizard level goes up, so it gets easier to cast spells. So basically the idea isn't that they're like spellcasters, it's you run in, you beat something up, and then you cast your spell. Temper Resolve is kind of cool because it's an 8-inch aura of reroll defense and morale of 6. Which is a pretty big boost. But you have to have your army arranged in a very specific way.
Correct.
In order for that to happen. Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that when you do a spell cast that has like that 8-inch thing, that's like a burst. I think only regiments that are in that 8 inches at the time of it going off get the buff, but the buff lasts until end of round. That's my understanding of how it works. So they don't just have like a permanent aura until the end of the round where people who walk into it get it. So basically you have to move all the rest of your regiments forward
or have
where you would charge him into to get the benefit, at which point you've already lost so much tempo. Like what else is going to attack you?
I think it works well if you run I run a big block of units because they're so chunky that you can probably hit some without too much activation. But I do agree. It's cool, it's great, but you're going to be playing an entire game around getting the Promethean to give the benefit. And I'm also just going to talk about the next one, which is Quint Blade, which is the same thing, but 2 hits and then +1 clash to a maximum of 4. So like both of these are very good in the right situation if you can line it up. My concern is if you play to maximize this, you might be minimizing your ability to win the game. You might be focusing on getting the most value here and moving things in optimal ways to get auras. As someone who's played OBR a lot in the previous edition where there's a lot of auras and stuff, like if you lose track
Conquestors. OBR is an Age of Sigmar army called Ossiarch Bonebreakers. Okay, you can continue.
They have a lot of concentric like auras that you have to be within a certain range of, and if I got lost in the sauce of playing to maximize that, sometimes I'll leave value on the table.
Okay, that's fair. Hephaestian, he gets extra damage in 2 different ways. I think Aura of Death is silly, and Aura of Death 7 is especially silly. If the timing works out, but obviously at the time of casting, you know how the timing is going to work out. Either the person that you are in combat with has activated already or hasn't. If they haven't, I think that you do Aura of Death 7. If they have, then I think you do a Trident Strike and just do extra damage. But you can also hit enemy regiments that you aren't directly fighting. Like if you kill a unit, then you can also Trident Strike afterwards.
So that's 6-inch range. That's the only thing I'll say. You're not reaching too far.
But
yeah, I get it.
All right, we're into the regiments, the meat and potatoes of the army. Thracites, I like them. Fluid formation, cool. Move 6, great. Light, wow. Light with shield, defense 3 lights. What is this? Dwegum? And look at that. They can take an auxiliary stand. They can take... Wait, any Hispaspists regiment may take... What is a Hispaspist? Is that wrong?
Yeah.
Is Thracites a Hispaspist? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume that means a Thracites regiment can take it. I think that you take the Therian, that adds a bunch of cleave 3 attacks to your unit.
Yeah. And
it's good.
Formation lets you can do janky charges if you need to.
Yeah. I'm actually, I know I said off screen that we were going to save this for the end, but I think that this is actually important and relevant
to talk about the command models.
Yeah. So I'm going to open up Thracites and we will talk about Andromachus.
Yes.
And that's the command stack adds +2 attacks.
Yeah.
And should the regiment activate from the strategic stack, then the auxiliary... Oh, the whole regiment, including auxiliary and character stands, gains flurry until end of round. That's
kind of cool. Yeah.
That's pretty good, but it requires you to activate from the strategic stack, which is if you have that seize the initiative or whatever thing, then you can do it once per game and your Thracites can really smash something up.
But the problem is that you're not going to get the +1 mover like the other part of the warlord trade. That's why I don't like it. That flurry is actually like flurry, especially with a big group of people, can be really good, but then you're not getting the other thing.
Yeah. Lockgos.
This is the one that I think is good.
This is the one where you can use the resolve and battlefield orders and tactics of a character within 18 inches.
Correct. And
that's pretty good.
18 inches
15 points
enough, and for 15 points, like thinking about the ones, like if you can give these guys, was one of them tenacious or whatever?
Yeah,
that seems good.
Wait, was it tenacious? I think it was tenacious.
Yeah, so that's what I like is you can start pulling those.
I mean, the reroll ones against volleys it's also really good.
Yeah,
and reroll 6s for defense is also really good. That's classic force multiplier.
Yep. And 18 inches. So I know we just talked about the giants and the 8-inch and the 18 inches is big enough where I think you can set that up without spending the whole game trying, and you can also spread out enough on the table where you can probably be grabbing different objectives.
Yeah.
I think 8 inches is just way too small, even on a bigger base. I think 18 is enough. And it doesn't just provide a better resolve, which it does, it also does the ability. So I think that's a very easy 15-point pickup, especially like on a resolve 2 unit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh my God, resolve 2.
Yeah,
wow.
That's the thing. Okay. So if you're pulling a character unit's like resolve of 4, I would have to check to see if it gets like the size, because a big block of hoplites, if you get the modified version, that's insane. And you're like, oh cool, I'm 5, I'm never gonna anywho.
Yeah.
Yep. I think the Lockgos or whatever is like almost auto take in most cases. I think it just does a lot if you run the 2 units that are throwing the tactics and orders around. Like it gives options.
The other thing I'll say is that without the auxiliary, without any officer upgrades, 120 points on a light unit with 6 move. These are your screens. These are what you want Thunder Riders and Cataphracti and stuff to charge into, so that they do not charge into your big block of 6 hoplites or 8 hoplites with character. You want them to hit the Thracites. I think the next unit, this is my transition. The next unit we're going to talk about, Selenoi, also serve this role of they are a light, fast unit with 130 points, 120 points. They're both in that range of here's my screen. And they also have a pretty annoying shooting attack, like 4 arcing fire attacks at 16-inch range. Pretty good. Loose formation means that they win duels with a lot of other archers.
That's why I like these guys. So the other important thing, and I know we queued this up earlier, this is one of the units, does not have Phalanx, does not have Vanguard.
Yeah.
This feels like a great unit to give the mastery where you give Vanguard, because moving these guys 18 inches up the table, and then when they enter, feels like a really great start, and then that sets a nice line of reinforcement as you go forward, and you're going to be reaching out 18 plus 16, and so you'll be threatening 24 inches out. 30.
18 plus 16 would be like 34. 44. Wait. No, that doesn't sound right. Now you've got me back.
It's 34.
Yes, it's 34.
So that's really good for the first turn, and then you're not really super exposed. 'Cause
Loose
defense
formation.
2 in Division 1
Huge.
isn't great, but you're a light unit, so that's fine. Loose formation is going to be what saves you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like these guys, and it's the only infantry range unit, I believe. So they do the thing that no one else does.
Yep.
And then if you have Mechanicus, you can just make them heavy and score. Why not?
Yeah, why not? If you're close enough. Hoplites.
Okay.
They're defense 4, effectively. They are defense 4 because they have shield and phalanx. So from the front, they're defense 4. They're very cheap for a defense 4 unit. Resolve 2 is bad, but then you think about how you're going to be taking a unit of 8 of them with an attached character.
Correct, and then it's good. Or you can take the Lacagos and then pick it up, take someone else's within 18 inches. That seems good.
Oh, yeah, they get the Lacagos, and the Dorilates that's just flurry. It doesn't give you any extra attacks or anything.
Correct.
Oh, flurry, but the auxiliary everyone gets relentless blows. So that actually is a massive.
Correct. So if you take
boost.
if you take one of the 2 units with the battlefield tactical orders, then you take the Dorolates to get the flurry and relentless, and then the attached character gives you the order. That's, I think, the right way to play it.
Yes. I don't think that you're taking more than 1 unit of hoplites.
No.
I think that you are taking the 1 massive unit of hoplites.
Yes,
So I don't think that the Lacagos makes sense.
Correct. Yep. And the one thing, we're going to go through the other things, but I feel like what we're going to hit, and this is, I think, one of the things that makes this army hard to play, is that there are going to be 3 units with phalanx that are very, very similar with very small differences. And I think the problem is Hoplite is probably the best of them, and that's the one you take. And the other ones are kind of probably traps.
Speaking of traps, phalangites. So I do notice that they have 4 attacks. They used to have 3 attacks. My memory was of 3 attacks.
Yep. But for this, you're paying the same exact price. So like the stats are the same, except they do not have shield. So they're going to have 1 less. They have support 3 instead of 2, which is cool.
Yeah.
And they have pike formations, which is their special rule that reduces impacts by 3. So like
in the front arc specifically.
Yep.
And does not. Ooh, they don't get inspired or shock.
Yeah. So that's good if you're playing an army that like relies on the mechanic of impact hits. Like these guys make some of the cav units 100 kingdoms less interesting. But like the problem is if you don't get the ideal matchup, you're just way better with hoplites.
Yeah,
that's the concern I have.
I could see taking some like small 4-man units of phalangites and kind of using them as pseudo screens, but the fact that they're medium and only March 5, I don't think that they move fast enough to actually screen unless you specifically bring your hoplites on later, at which point then I think you're hurting yourself. I think. So that's my thoughts. Agema. These guys, they are mediums, but fluid formation means that you can do some really interesting stuff with them. Shield, they have got cleave 1. I like these guys. What's Andrew?
Movement 6. I just want to be very clear. The reason these guys are good, they are expensive at 170. They have none of the penalties or bonuses of phalanx, but that means that these guys can get Vanguard if you have that mastery. With movement 6, they're going to be able to throw a medium unit 18 inches up or come in from a reinforcement. That's badass. Cleave 1 in an army that doesn't have a lot of cleave, really good. Defense 2 with shield, good. I like these guys a lot. The character upgrade.
The character upgrade's actually really good because it gives the entire unit flurry and +2 attack. So like for 195 points is a lot, but 195 points and you're throwing out 17 Clash 3 flurry attacks without any inspire. They have cleave.
They also can
when you do it, they can inspire to get up to that 4 rerolling. And fluid formation means that you can get good angles, which either make you unappealing to charge or can make your own charges easier.
You can also spin yourself onto objectives.
They are medium, so they can score. They cannot take any auxiliaries. And I don't think they need it. Heroes want to join them. I think that you can make a case for a hero joining them. But
I in general agree with you. I like these guys because in an army of units that need other things to make them good, these guys can go toe to toe with some pretty decent, good infantry competition. and they're not burdened down by some of the phalanx items, and they make good use of the mastery that gives Vanguard, which I like. I feel like I'm over-indexing on that a little bit, but I feel like I used to run that a lot in Nords, and it was amazing. So this feels like a way to do it here, and I think it will be just as good if you can set up the right army.
Yep. Speaking of Agema, Saturoi are everything about Agema, except instead of the Andromachus, they cost more points already.
Yeah.
They have worse defense, but they come with Vanguard built in.
Yep.
They come with Impact, which is weird. They come with Opportunist. And the Seder Assassin is really weird, and I actually don't even want to unpack that. But their most important thing is they come in from any board edge except for your opponent's board edge.
Yep.
They do not need to come from your reinforcement line. So that makes Opportunist that just unlocks Opportunist. It makes it very powerful. So everything good about Agema is as good or better than Saturoi, except for the fact that you cannot get just flurry. You have to rely on Opportunists.
Correct. Yep. And I think another important part about this unit is in an army that has basically no evasion, they have evasion too, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, evasion too. Oh, well then their defense 1 plus shield is meaningless.
Correct.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. And the assassin, I'm just going to say it. You don't want to unpack it. I think it's kind of a trap because it lets them do a weird dual thing that makes wound allocation really janky, and I feel could be a liability. I don't think.
Oh, yeah.
At 200-point unit, I don't think I'd want to do that.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. Sacred Band does not exist. Clockwork Hoplites does not exist. Just a whole page we can ignore. Companion Cavalry. I think the Dread is really interesting. They have bad impact for a medium cavalry unit, but they do a ton of attacks, even if they don't have any cleave or anything. But Dread alone, I love Dread. It makes it so that the enemy can never inspire. And if you pair this with that Supremacy ability where they can't score either.
Yeah.
Plus, you can get extra impact into the flanks if it's extra impact, right?
Yeah, and terrifying.
Yeah. So, you can do some stuff if you go whole hog into it. I'm not sure if they show up in a conventional army list.
I don't know.
Maybe
I've never played against them. I like them because in a relatively slower army, I know we're going to go through some faster things in the next few units, but in an armies of move 5, move 8 is good. Even by Cav standards, where I know some Cav standards are 7.
Household Knights are 7, I think.
Yeah, so I think this gives them something. I think if you can get the charge off, that Dread and your high number of attacks, even without cleave, makes you just a tar pit. I think you're just going to be a huge pain because you don't have phalanx.
Granted, you're only defense 2.
Yeah.
No shield. That's really low for defense. I think
that's fair.
I think Mounted Squires are better defense.
Fair. I think for 160 for what these do with Dread is good. I think that especially with the Warlord ability or Supremacy ability where when they charge some or they're engaged with something they don't score, I think it'd be funny to take a unit of 3 of these, side charge into a unit, make them not that's engaged with hoplites or something. Suddenly they're Dread, so they're inspiring nowhere. That's funny.
Yeah.
They're not scoring if you have that Supremacy ability. That's funny.
Yeah.
And these guys got a bunch of attacks. So I agree with you. But I think for 160 points they're good, and I think movement 8 mediums is probably a good thing to have something for your army. I do agree you probably don't want to go too crazy unless you build a non-conventional army.
Yeah. Inquisitors. I don't like them. They've got a bunch of rules 6 attacks, cleave 1, flurry. I think cleave 1 is what kills them for me.
Yeah.
And only defense 2. They feel like they will melt, and they don't feel like they'll do that much melting.
Yep, I think
especially for 200 points. 200 points on them kills me because that's Warbred territory, and Warbred at least have cleave 2.
I like these units because I think aesthetically I like them.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
Cool. That's but fair. I do feel they could be a trap. I do think with Idolon, if you have the one directive that buffs brutes, I think it could be cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I worry that if you go too hard, I think this plus an Idolon could be a nice move in to assassinate something, but they're very expensive. I in general agree with you. I just think I would put them in every list because I think the model is sick.
That's legitimate. You're allowed to have pet units.
Yeah.
Honestly. Promethean, there are a lot of points, I think. There are a lot of points, and they're not incredibly tanky, and their spellcasting isn't that good. This is the one with the auras that we were talking about. Cleave 2 is pretty good in the army, but only 10 attacks. Terrifying 1 helps. 220 points is a hard sell for me.
Yeah, the problem is that I'm coming from the Nords army where I play a lot of big boys, and I think these guys, like, I think it's cool they can buff people around them, but, like, do they want to be by stuff? They're going to be coming in late. I guess they're medium, which is kind of cool, but, like, I worry.
Oh, they're medium. Oh.
Medium at least means they're coming in with other things, so that's cool.
For a long time, I thought that them being medium was actually a typo, an error in the army builder.
Oh, really?
Or I think Army Builder had them listed as heavy for a long time.
The other one,
there was something where it was like something had an error.
The other one is heavy, so they come later, but like I think them being medium means they at least enter and hang out with the people they're supposed to. So they're like fine. They got good stats in the fact they're like monster stats, which is good. But like they don't got like smite, like the siege breaker. They don't have, you know, like the cast has to be done at the end of the regiment's activation. So it's a very specific time you can do it. So you can't do like a buff, then move, then attack. Like it's a very restrictive order. And like they are a priest 2, but they need 4 successes instead of 2. So you really need to do damage. So you get the bonus to cast. So it just feels like there's a lot of things that have to line up perfectly. I think when they do, it probably feels amazing, right? Like, yes, I can imagine you stab something and everyone around you is re-rolling 6s to defense and resolve and just totally stop the enemy. And that's got to be the best feeling in the world. But I feel a lot you'll not do enough damage and you'll get 3 instead of 4 successes and you'll just feel sad and pay 220 points for that.
Yeah.
Let's go. Anything else?
No, and Hephaestion is like the same stat line, except it's got Cleave 3 and it has different spell choices. Oh, Cleave 3, Terrifying 2. So like
the reason I like him more for 20 points more is he operates by himself. So
that's fair.
So he is heavy, so he's gonna come by himself, but like he just like either uses his trident to do damage with this spell, or he just is Aura of Death, a 7 or whatever, which is just wacky if you can get the activations right, which you might have a better chance with the stack manipulation you have as an army. So I think that's cool because he's a monster that operates like a monster, which is in an army that wants everyone to stay together. You can just put him in the other end of the table and he's got stats to just kind of be himself and be okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. Heavy does worry me a little. It seems like he'd be in very late with only move 7. Like Apex Predator had the problem where with move 7 and as a heavy, in the Wadroon army, it wasn't really impactful.
I mean, on the positive, unless you do the weird Vanguard trick mastery we've been talking about, by the time he comes in, your units are, a few move 5s up the table. They're not that, but I understand your point. I do worry that it's cool he can operate by himself, but if he comes, by the time he gets there, it's too late, then it doesn't really help. So I agree with that.
Yeah. Minotaur Haspeths, 6 wound, medium brutes with Vanguard and defense 4. Feels pretty good. I mean, also the fact that they have Impact, Brutal 1, and Cleave 1, that's decent. 180 points is on the expensive side. I think that, like, they're supposed to kind of be a screen because of Vanguard, but I think they're too expensive to be a screen.
I can agree with that because their defense 2 plus shield. That's
defense 3. I said defense 4 earlier. It's 2 plus shield.
Yeah,
the resolve is 3.
Yeah, I was gonna say if there were 4, I think that would probably make them worth that because they could stick around. But I think they feel a little on the expensive side. I do agree with you for a screen. And while they do hit harder than a lot because they do have Cleave 1 and not everything has Cleave. I just feel like I don't know if I'd run these guys because I would probably just put one of these guys in other units. They're in the front rank and going to get attacked. I don't know. Maybe it's juicier.
Auxiliary. I think they make more sense as auxiliary.
Yeah.
Oh, we're about to talk about the Talos. I hate the Talos. It is... Okay. I hate the Talos because it is more durable than the Tantor. For less than half the cost, and like it has a pretty comparable profile offensively. Weirdly, like it has it has a proportionately less offensive profile to the Tantor. Like the Tantor is a 320 point unit. This is a 250 point unit. Its offensive profile is like that much less, but its defense profile is actually higher. So it feels like the Talos should be around like the 280 to 300 mark. To me, I think that you take this unit, and this unit does all the work that like an 8-man hoplite squad would do, in my opinion.
Yep. I think there's a lot of things that it does.
This is a
that's
solo
interesting.
guy.
Yeah.
He anchors a flank on his own. He is the better version of what you were saying the Promethean does.
I can see that.
You put him on his own. You have the rest of your army over here. This guy just is doing his thing.
So, okay. I understand you saying that. I think that this guy, I hate this guy because I think his model's ugly, but I think he's extremely good unit for
0 out of 10 model.
Yes. I think he's got great stats. I think he's got all the rules. I think that you could either run him as a solo and he would do fine, but I think his rules make him want to be close to other things, and I'll explain. So first off, I hate that he is the set of the Brazen Race, and I hate that because I play Spires as one of my armies. He ignores Lethal Demise, so I can't throw crows at him and hurt him. He just doesn't care. He doesn't care about Aura of Death. That's annoying to me because I have ways of doing that. He cares nothing for decay. So I think it's good for him doing what he does, but it is annoying that this unit's big thing is, I feel it's a bit of a negative gameplay experience that this guy's thing is he ignores everyone else's rules, and I think that feels bad.
That's legitimate.
He counts as 6 stands for scoring, which is really good for an army that scores. So this is where I'm going to transition to. I think he's meant to be played in around other things. The Blood of the Forge God gives friendly spellcaster with priest within 10 +1 priest. Your big giants are bad at casting unless they do damage. I think this helps you get there.
It gives you +1 priest.
+1 to your priest.
Yeah. They start at priest 2. They gain +1 for each hit that they do during their activation.
Yeah, this gives them another.
So it gives +1.
Yeah, I think it helps. I'm not saying it's enough, but sorry. I think they are spending abilities. This guy wants to do a lot of things, and that's one reason I don't like it functionally on the table, right? The next
I think he's so undercosted that you can ignore him.
I can agree with that.
Yeah.
But like the option to purchase for 10 points, and I think each one of these are good. Mascaurus is all friendly monster regiments declaring a charge action while within 8 inches gains unstoppable. We covered characters can get unstoppable with just a character input. Your giants or your monsters ain't getting that. This is a way of doing that. And it also includes him. Just want to be clear. He doesn't have unstoppable if you pay for that. Even if he just gets unstoppable, that's worth 10 points in my opinion. The next one is all friendly regiments declaring a charge while within 8 inches of this. Get impact +1, which is you have a few things with impacts. You also are probably running big box units. That seems kind of worth 10 points if you can set that up. Like imagine a full send with like a big block of hoplites.
Okay, so you have 9 total stands. You have 1 character and 8 stands of hoplites. So you get 9 impact attacks.
Okay, when you put it like that,
9 impact attacks with no brutal or anything.
No, you're right. No, you're right. No, you're right. You're right.
Oh, genius. Oh,
the
perfect.
mask is the one you run because it makes him better. You're right. You just run him as a solo. You do that, but you ignore the blood of the.
Oh, he doesn't already have unstoppable.
Correct.
I thought he already had unstoppable.
No, he did. That's why I said.
Okay, 10 points to give him unstoppable.
Yeah,
and then
which you do every
if
day.
you also, I think you run a Talis and a Promethean.
Yeah,
and you have the Talos on one flank, the Promethean kind of in between him and your massive block.
Yeah,
and then you can get the unstoppable. Minotaur Therian, Cleave 3, and Linebreaker. I think that these guys are auxiliary stands, nothing more. I don't know if you.
Nope.
The fact that they're heavy kills them for me.
Yep.
They come in too late. They're too slow.
Which is why the auxiliary gets around that. That's what,
exactly.
It feels like a core mechanic of this army is the auxiliary rule, and it seems like that you don't really run these as solos. You run these by taking these guys and putting them in other units that need to be able to do damage.
Yeah.
Because the numbers are enough there that if you put them in a unit that doesn't have a lot of cleave, you at least have one stand of a bunch of attacks with cleave. I think that's enough to turn even battles.
Yep, and I think actually a bigger sticking point for me than the cleave is I'm pretty sure this guy is only restricted. So you can either take 3 of them as restricted for 190 points, or you can take 3 of them in auxiliary units through your army that are already taking like mainstay choices.
And I like it cool because like the problem is here if you take 6 wounds, you're losing a 60-point stand. If I take 6 wounds on Thraktites, I lose one 50 point or 40 point or 30 point stand. Good job. Have fun. So that's my belief.
Chariots, they're crazy. We actually, we can talk a lot about chariots, but I think we're going to have to keep it pretty slim.
Yeah.
I think that they are extremely good. Fire in advance. So the fact that they come with flank and weapon platform means that they can kind of like shoot around and,
cheap.
They're cheap. 130 points. They play with warband building mechanics in really weird ways. Yeah. They have really good stats, I would say. Like, the Flogabalin does torrential fire, which normally means, they've got 10-inch range, so you have to be within 5 inches to get it. But condensed propellant means that full 10 inches is always your effective range. So actually, your Barrage 7 is actually Barrage 8. And also, your torrential fire is always triggering. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So 8 Volley 2 attacks. Volley 2 isn't the best, but like with fire in advance and wait, dead shot. Hold on.
Okay, I was just gonna ask on that. That's the one I forgot off the top of my head. But yeah, I think that's the thing is
I think dead shot always counts as taking aim. Yeah, you always count as taking aim. Okay, so they're actually Volley 3. So 50%. So like you're making 8 attacks, 4 of them hit, and that means that you actually get 6 hits with torrential fire, with the ability to spike higher because you can roll better.
I think this guy I think you probably want to be shooting as much as you can because that range is pretty good. But like, I think his stats are good enough that if they get in close combat, it's not terrible. Like,
you take
130 points. Who cares?
I mean, they're fire and advancing, so like you are moving into range, shooting, moving out of range, moving into range, shooting, moving out of range.
But if someone pins you, you're like not like you got.
And you can also do stuff because of weapon platform. You can move and like shoot the flank of someone and then fire in advance past them.
Oh, okay.
And then they can't get to you. And everything that we're saying,
shit. Oh man, so sick.
Everything that we're saying here also applies to the Scorpios. I think the Scorpios is actually the weaker of the two. Rapid Volley is cool. It doesn't have the special rule where it just always is in its effective range. So it's Barrage 8 is actually Barrage 8. 16-inch range and Rapid Volley. Basically, Rapid Volley is every one counts as 2 hits. So it's relentless blows for shooting.
I think,
but they are also dead shot too. So
I think the way that you run each one of these, I think the first one is better. I think the first one you move forward, shoot, and then fire and advance back. I think that's how you do it. The Scorpios, you want to be moving, shooting from the flank or rear.
Yeah, because they reroll one.
Because then they they exploit flank. So I think that's how you run it. But the stats are otherwise identical. So it's either do you want torrential fire and full set attacks at 10, or do you want a little lighter, longer range, and then hopefully you're setting up exploit weakness to kind of get the better, to deny them the saves, and hopefully you get advantage from rapid volley. Yeah. But I think they're good for 130 points.
Yeah, I don't think you do the meme of taking like 9 of them, but I do think that you take... I legitimately think that you take 3 of them.
I can see that. Yeah. I can see that. Like you said, like 6 or 9 is like one of those...
Yeah, you take one warband slot, but you take the full warband slot is what I think.
Yep.
And just the fact that they're one warband slot but give you 3 extra cards means that you are playing Havoc with like card advantage and all that.
I didn't think about that. That is wild. Okay, that is actually...
So the fact that they're a shooting unit that also intrinsically gives you that is kind of crazy because you want shooting units to usually activate last. And also they're a cavalry unit, so... they also want to activate last as a threat piece. So basically, you just have them at the bottom of your stack. You have 3 extra cards. Like, you are going to out-activate your opponent at that point, basically.
Yeah.
Or because you get so many cards just from those guys, you can go so elite with the rest of your force.
Yeah.
Like, I'm taking, like, without chariots, it would be like a 7 or 8 card plus like 3 characters list.
Yeah.
With this, you're like taking like a 10 card plus 3 characters list, and it's like, what?
That's interesting, cool, because they're cheap, and then even if you lose a guy dies, you just lose a card. You don't lose like. There's a lot of weirdness with these guys that I didn't realize that rule provided. That's interesting.
Yeah. And I believe that's the end of the list.
That is, because everything here is all the officers, which we've already covered.
Thanks for bearing with us through this. I think this is one of our longer ones. Like, I think we have been recording for a while, and I'm not going to cut that much out of it.
Yeah.
So.
The one thing, the wrap up I'll have on this is
Okay.
I think there's a lot of great ideas here, and I think the command stack or the strategic stack is cool. But my concern is a lot like Wadroon is I think they're really worried about people abusing things. So like Phalanx has a lot of restrictions and they have to do things to set up. And I just worry that there's a lot of very interlinked things that when things all click, it's probably very powerful. It's just not going to click a lot for people. And that's why I don't think they're doing as well in the meta as possible. And I think that some of these things they should push a little bit further, such as the Supremacy building for the Idolon. Like, make that trade-off so good that you're giving up stuff and you're once around activation where it's worth it for what you're getting. Hardened 1 is not a good trade-off for that much setup.
Evade +2.
Yeah, see, that would be good. In an army of no invade, flat 1 or 2s, I would say. That's really interesting.
33% of attacks just blocked.
Yeah. See,
but the problem is when you're working with like defense 4 guys, but that you're right with never mind. I'm just talking nonsense. Yeah, I will say I actually don't know how they're doing meta-wise. I think it's poorly. I think that this at least is poorly perceived. Yeah. I don't know if it's a bad faction or if it's just a poorly perceived faction. Wadroon is kind of like in that zone too, I think, where it's poorly perceived from a power spectrum, but like people do win events. And I know that there is a big argument being said that can be said that players win events, armies don't.
Yes.
But I do think that certain armies might make it more or less likely for a player to win an event.
I will say the
Worlds will be interesting.
Yes, I'm interested in that.
You'll get the players who are winning events with bad armies because they're good players.
Yes.
And then you'll get the players who are winning events because they're good players with good armies. And then they'll be competing with each other. And I guess that will really that'll push the players win events to its extreme.
Correct. And I think like one thing that hurts city-states is the vision they sell you is big blocks of infantry, which I don't think work as well as in practice in Conquest, even though it's a rank and flank that it should.
Hedgehog lists.
Yes.
Man.
But I think this list doesn't want to play a bunch of infantry and walking forward. I think that there's probably a list here that someone could build. That this is going to be the hot take, like the Hedgehog list with Guild Legions and stuff, which like a year later people started playing and getting success with. Here's Rand's hot take on how to build city-states. I think there's a really awkward way you play these guys where you just pick the mastery, you get Vanguard. You pick the horse guys Supremacy, where you can when you're engaged, they don't count as the enemy doesn't count as scoring, and you just play objectives. And if the mission plaque has 3 to 5 missions that are all objective based, you just play a really regressive thing where you score and they don't, and you just like get murdered and don't impact their army, but they just never get any points. And I think that is a weird and unfun way for someone to build a list, because in a combat game you want to be killing things, so it's just like natively. But I think you have enough tools to make things score better, and prevent them from scoring, that I feel there's probably a mechanic there.
Yeah, I actually can legitimately see like a mid-range army based around Eparchos doing very good with a particularly skilled pilot. I don't think it's a list that I could run, but...
No, because you have to play it very You can't take any chances. It's all about playing standing in circles.
Always take chances.
Yeah, but imagine, I know that in our local events, we hit time a lot. So, like, that is an army. If your meta is only hitting turn 7, if you can just shut off people scoring, like, that's probably impressive.
Yeah. All right, let's start building it. Bye.
Thanks everyone for hanging out. Thanks for watching our hot takes. As stated, watch our other content. Let us know if you like these hot takes. If there's battle reports or other things you want, please like and subscribe. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye.